I want to introduce to you, of course, Maxim, the mystery man. He is a film producer and also one of the very, very few Adobe Master Trainers around the world. And we're really happy to have him here today. So please have a blast. Send him as many questions as you want and have fun. Thank you.
All right. Hello. I don't know where to stand to not get the feedback, so we'll see how we get on. How are you all doing? Yeah, you're awake? Did you have enough coffee? Because you're going to need it. You had a good sleep last night? You feel ready? Okay, your brains are active. Thank you very much for coming along. I actually have three sessions that I'm going to run for you, and they're in different stages of development. So I'm going to give you really core skills for people who are new to editing. Then I'm going to give you some more, we'll take a break, and we're going to have more advanced skills where we'll look a little bit more deeply at the technology. And then later, we're just going to go crazy, and we're going to look at vector scopes and waveforms, and VR video, we'll look at 360, and anything else that I can think of. I have a whole list of things to show you later on this afternoon. And in particular, I'm going to show you working with other applications. We're going to touch on that in the second session, but we're going to look at interoperability with After Effects, Prelude, Audition, Photoshop, and we'll see how we get on. Before I kick off, I should mention that I write the official book on Premiere Pro, and I've recorded a little under 2,000 tutorials on post-production, but nobody knows what I look like. So if I say the phrase, now let's click on the file menu, usually people recognize my voice and they realize I've been in your head before, and now I'm outside of your head, which has to be better. I think that has to be better. But what not so many people know about my work is that I'm also a filmmaker and a director, and I've directed about 30 short films. I've edited a lot of those. And so the techniques that I'm going to show you today are based on my personal practice as a filmmaker. I'm not going to give you a sales pitch. I'm going to show you how to practically use the software, which means a lot of the time I'm going to be brushing over things that Adobe will tell you are important because I don't think they're important. I just think we need to make the movie and tell the story. So that's my approach to using the technology. Before I begin with this core skills basic introduction session, can I ask how many of you are already editing with Premiere Pro? Will give me a sense of where you're at. Okay, and who's editing with another editing system? Great. Okay, we'll give you hugs later. And there are very good other systems though, and for those of you who are cutting with another system, I recently recorded the official video training for Avid Media Composer. I've been an Avid certified instructor for 10 years. I wrote the official book on Edius, if you're using that for news, by Grass Valley. Well, what I've found is that the core skills for video editing are the same universally. And occasionally the language changes, but essentially the job of the editor is 90% looking at things and making creative choices. 10% clicking and actioning edits. And when we talk about building a sequence, when we talk about making a project, I feel like there's all these cameras I should point, because at film school they said it makes you look important when you're taking pictures. Everybody looks. Spielberg does that. If you look at shots of Spielberg on set, he points when the cameras are on set. Essentially, the role of the editor is to look through all of the available material, to become familiar with the available material deeply, to understand the pace, the rhythm, the breath, the musicality, the dance of the footage, and having understood that heartbeat of the footage, to make decisions about the timing and the content. A friend of mine, Anne Coates, she edited Lawrence of Arabia. She has 3 Oscars. And she's offered to edit my first feature film as a director, which I'm ridiculously excited about. And I was asking her how she chooses which content to use in a shot. Which take does she select? How does she know when to cut? And her response was, it's none of your business. I said, okay, but have a little more wine. Tell me how do you know it's a good shot? She said, it's personal to me. She said that I feel it, and if I feel something and it feels real, that's the cut. And I don't care to explain it. And she said I don't care about continuity, I don't care about the color or the effects or anything like that. So if something appears, you know, the bottle of the water is here and then in the next shot it's in my hand, I don't care. Because when audiences are feeling something, they don't care either. So as a filmmaker and as a director, as a storyteller, as a screenwriter, my focus is always on the authenticity of the feeling and not necessarily on the precision of the rendition, if I can make that distinction. Okay, so now we've started with the highfalutin philosophy. We'll get onto metaphysics at the end, and we'll look at quantum theory. But before we get to that, I want to start off by showing you how to build a project in Premiere Pro. Now I need to make a small apology. When they said come to Dubai and speak, they mentioned that you have a lot of sunshine. And it's true, you have a lot more sunshine than we have in London. It turns out that all of it wants to shine on this screen. The sun is very excited. So I'm going to zoom in a little while I'm working. Get this down here. So hopefully for those of you at the back that's a little bit clearer, but I'm going to be zooming in and out a little bit. Now, my close friends know that when I'm speaking, it's okay to tell me to shut up, because I will not stop. So if anybody has a question, please put your hand up at any time. I can't promise I'll ask you what the question is right away, and let me finish my sentence. But please ask at the time. It's much better if it's fresh in your mind, and there's a good chance that someone else in the room is thinking the same question, but they don't have your confidence and dashing looks. So be bold and ask the questions as we go, okay? Okay, so so this is Premiere Pro. This is Premiere Pro CC 2017.1, I think. Let me double check my help here. Yep, 2017.1.2. So it has some bug fixes. I want to mention, if you're new to post-production and video editing, that it is impossible for you to use the system and get an error message that is your fault. You can get information messages that are your fault. You know, if you press the wrong key or the menu option isn't there, that's you doing it wrong. But if you get an error message where it says Premiere Pro has crashed because this thing has happened, that is never, ever, ever your fault. So be bold and know that you can always undo when you're working with a non-linear editing system. If you're working on a Mac, you're going to be pressing Command Z. In Britain we say Command Z, and when I record tutorials, they force me to record a patch reel of me saying Z, 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 Command Z, Control Z, so they can replace the Zs. But everybody knows Z, right? And of course on PC it's going to be Control Z or Control Z. Same shortcut. So before we get into the interface, I'm going to begin at the beginning. I'm going to begin with the, I need to switch off the battery life on here. So before we get into this, here we go, auto lock. I'm going to start off by creating a new project. And if you're following along, you should be able to do this easily. I'm going to show you the quick and the slow version of starting a new project. But let's start with the quick version. So I'm just going to close this project. I'm using a keyboard shortcut. For those of you who like keyboard shortcuts, Control or Command W will close a panel or a window. That's a standard keyboard shortcut. Shift Control or Command W will close the project. So here I am, I'm in the start screen. And I'm going to, just turning off my auto lock here on, where's the set? Here we go, auto lock. Never. Okay. Great. So on this screen, you've got a lot of options. You can sync your settings, you can filter out the projects you're working on. There's a whole bunch of learning. But when you create a new project in Premiere Pro, what you're really doing is creating a project file. And the file has an extension, and the extension is PROJ. So it's Premiere Project. Because of, there was a competitor product when Adobe came up with Premiere, And so you'll notice that all of the marketing material says Adobe Premiere Pro instead of just Premiere Pro. And it's the bane of my life that I have to say that in every tutorial. But we're just going to call it Premiere. So on this screen, we've got the option to create new projects or open a project. We also have team projects, which I'll mention this, later on this afternoon. But to begin with, we're just going to create a new project. That is quite dim, isn't it? Okay. So, a Premiere Pro project file contains all of the creative decisions that you make, any graphics that you generate inside of Premiere Pro, but none of the media that you're working with. The best way to think of a Premiere Pro project file is to think of it as a little book of shopping lists. And those shopping lists contain ingredients that you're going to use to make a cake or a stew, or I like lasagna. Let's say we're going to make a lasagna. I have a great recipe for lasagna. See me afterwards. So the ingredients list or the shopping list contains none of the shopping. It just contains descriptions of the ingredients. And then you go to the shops and you buy the ingredients, and you might have a big trolley full of food, but that's connected to the shopping list. It's not inside the shopping list. So when we're working with media in Premiere Pro, it's important to be clear about this distinction between what we're going to describe as clips or master clips inside the project, which look like video files and they play like video files and they have names like video files, but they're not video files, any more than if you write cheese on a shopping list. It isn't actually cheese, it's just telling you about cheese. It's completely separate from the media files. And the relative size is kind of similar to a shopping list and an actual thing in mass as well. Media files for video are enormous. They're absolutely massive. But a Premiere Pro project file is quite small. Very often you can just email them to people. They're quite small. And there are some collaboration workflows that you can use where if you all have copies of the media, you can just share on Dropbox or email or OneDrive or whatever you want to use, iCloud, Creative Cloud Storage, to update the project file that you're working on. It's like updating a shopping list. But we'll get to that later. To begin with, I need to tell Premiere Pro the name of the project that I'm going to use. It's just a name for a file, has no impact on the way you work in the project. And I need to give Premiere Pro a location. So all of my projects are amazing, obviously. So I'm going to call this Amazing Project. And I've got a location option. You get some recent locations here. I'm going to click Browse. And on my desktop, I've got some lessons. I'm going to go in here and I'm just going to, let's make a folder called Project Files. And I'll put it in there. Now, if I just zoom in and out a little bit, this is a standard Windows browse dialog. In macOS, this would be a standard Finder browse dialog. It's the same thing. And if you don't know how to make a new folder, in both operating systems, there's a new folder button. So you can make a new folder. But I'm happy with this project, so I'm going to click Save Folder. At this point, all I've done is I've given a name and a location, and that's all I need to do. When people are learning Premiere Pro, initially, they look at these menus and they see time code, I don't know what that is, feet and frames, what? The audio samples in milliseconds, this sounds like technology. What on earth does capture mean? What does this do? Display the project item name and label color for all instances, which I think is the longest description of a checkbox I've seen for a small feature, which makes no sense right now at all. And if you're wondering, the answer is yes, you probably do, so let's do that. Scratch disks, what on earth is a scratch disk? These are really just temporary folders for particular kinds of file that you're going to create while you're working with Premiere Pro. And then we've got ingest settings, and now I'm thinking of eating the shopping list, and I don't know what that means. But really what it means is that Premiere Pro is going to do something with the media, with the footage, with the video files that you're importing. It's going to do something with them at the point of import. Maybe it's going to convert them into what's often called a mezzanine codec, a standardized file type and codec on your system. Maybe they're going to make very low resolution, small files that you can work with that are less work for playback. It's easier to play back on a less powerful computer, or easier to play back if you're using network-based storage, which is often slower than local storage. But we don't need any of this. We're just going to ignore all of that. All I'm going to do is choose a name and a location, and I'm going to click OK down at the bottom. Many broadcasters that work with Premiere Pro and systems like it don't even ask their editors to do this. What they do is they create a folder that contains a project file which is already configured the way they want, with some preset sequences, with some preset assets like the company logo and maybe some pre-built sequences with intros, and they just duplicate the entire folder and start another project. Now, Premiere Pro's paradigm, Premiere Pro's way of working with media and files is file path and file name, and that's it. And what I mean by file path and file name is where is the file and what is the file called. In IT terms, the location of a file is called the file path. And the file path is the names of the folders. So you'll have, in this case, I've got a folder in my desktop, which is called lessons, and inside of that, I've got a folder called project files, and inside of that, I've got amazingproject.prproj. So that's my file path, desktop, project files, amazingproject.prproj. Premiere Pro will not stop you moving things, renaming things, relocating stuff. It won't stop you recreating things. It will always trust you that if you told it where something is, that's where it is. And this is a great way of working. Who's cutting with Avid Media Composer right now? Who's using Avid? One person, okay. And a couple of people. So I'm feeling your pain when it comes to media management, because if you work in the Avid Media Composer way, if you use the media management in Media Composer and you keep within that paradigm, it's fantastic. It's incomparably good. But if you ever need to break out of that paradigm, Media Composer can make it quite difficult for you to relink and reconnect to things because it's managing the media. Premiere Pro does not manage the media. It just trusts you. It's very flexible. So here we are in Premiere Pro. And the first thing that I need to do is get some media in. But before I do that, I want to give you a couple of fundamental principles to follow to understand the Premiere Pro interface so that you can explore it and navigate. In my experience of teaching complex technology for, goodness, about 20 years now, I'm getting old, this is terrible. For about 20 years now, it takes about 3 days for your brain to become familiar with the shapes, the fonts, the colors, the buttons, the menu, the appearance of the menus, before you can really get to grips with the workflow. So when you start to use the technology, don't worry if you feel like you're going slowly. The reason you're going slowly is that your brain is creating new memories of the colors and the shapes and the patterns in the graphics of the interface. You will find after 3 days, you get faster. So give yourself a break. It's okay to go slow at the beginning. In fact, in terms of learning, it's very important that you go slow. It's important that you're aware of what you're doing, because if you're not watching what you're doing, you have nothing to remember. All you're going to remember is that random clicking did something. So make sure you pay attention to what you clicked on. So what are we paying attention to? Well, inside of Premiere Pro, you'll notice that there are a number of panels. So here I've got a panel you can see at the top, it's called Project. Right at the top here, I've got another panel called Source. And you'll notice that the panel called Project has a blue outline. And that blue outline is very, very important, because each of these panels gives you different menu options and different functionality. They're different parts of the software. And the panel with the blue outline is the active panel, which means that if you use keyboard shortcuts or if you go into the menus in the system, you're going to get options that relate to that panel. In my experience, the number one thing that catches out new users is selection. So if you're trying to do something, it's not because you forgot how to do it, it's because you had the wrong thing selected. You were in the wrong panel, or you didn't click on the file, you didn't click in the right menu. So slow down and make sure you have the right thing selected. This thing I'm showing you now, the blue outline on the panel, is the number one thing that catches out new users in Premiere Pro. So know that you can only have one active panel at a time. So then we've got a source panel. And let me tell you a little bit about what these do. So the project panel is like it's your notebook. It's not your shopping list. It's the place where all of your clips are going to go, all of the media that you may or may not decide to use in your project. And you're going to organize it, you're going to create bins, which are a bit like folders. Maybe you're going to have shots of wildlife. That's going to go in a bin called wildlife. Maybe you're going to have some music clips. They're going to go in a bin called music. You're going to organize your project in this panel, and you're going to use it as your go-to store for content, not your hard drives. You're not going to go looking at your storage drives all the way through the edit. You're always going to pull things in here first of all. It makes it much easier to organize your content, and it allows you to organize the content in relation to this project specifically. So every time you open this project file, you've got all of the clips associated with it. You don't have to go hunting on your hard drives and your storage drives. Does anybody know the reason why hard drives or hard disks are called hard disks? There's a historical reason for it. Do you know why it is?
Compared to floppy disk, maybe?
Yeah, it's compared to floppy disks. So the original disks were floppy bits of plastic with ferric oxide rust on it for storing magnetism. And they were literally bendy, they were floppy. They were like a floppy old record. And so they made disks that were hard, they were rigid. So they called them hard disks instead. It's a really dumb reason for the name. So, okay, so we've got source, so clicking into it. And I want to make another really dumb distinction. In computers, a single click is selecting. A double click is activating. I want to be very clear about the distinction when you're working in Premiere Pro. So if I ever say select, I mean click once or make a marquee selection, or a lasso as they say. I always get, in Britain we say lasso, and that's another word that I have to re-record when I'm recording tutorials. They say lasso. So when you click and drag to create a box to select, you can do that too. But never, you are never going to select something on a computer by double clicking on it. If you double click on something in Premiere Pro, it's going to open it, and very often the menus will all go wrong and it won't make any sense, and you're going to say, Maxim's a terrible teacher because I selected the thing and it didn't work. It's because you double clicked. So be very clear about the difference. So we have a source monitor. We have a program monitor. The source monitor is for looking at stuff. It's like going on YouTube and checking out your videos. The program monitor is for looking at the sequence you're working on, and you're going to work on the sequence down here in the timeline. And we'll get into how the timeline works in a moment. We've also got some tools. See here, we've got a whole list of different tools for working on the timeline. It's a bit like Photoshop. Who here has never used Photoshop? Okay, you should hang out with some guys here. We've got.
No, but I know the tools.
You know the tools.
Yeah.
You never used
I
it.
hate Photoshop.
But you've used it.
Yeah.
Okay, so you have used it. Okay. You shouldn't hate Photoshop. You should feel the love. You've got to embrace it. You know?
Premiere is more easier than.
It is a little more accessible. Premiere Pro is a little more accessible than Photoshop. That's true. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to import some media. And what you'll notice is that in older versions of Premiere Pro, see where these names are. See it says project, amazing project. We've got media browser, libraries, info, and so on. These were designed like tabs. They were designed like a filing system. And they're actually separate panels that have been placed into the same frame, the same box, to save space on screen. And in the recent version of Premiere Pro, Adobe had this feedback from users that they wanted to clean up the display of the interface. It was too busy, there was too much going on in the graphics of the interface. So they took away the little design that made it look like a tab. But that was very confusing because now when I tell people I'm going to click on the tab for the media browser, it looks nothing like a tab. So I want you to visualize a little tab thing like a filing system and it will make sense. I'm going to click on media browser. And in here I've got some media. In fact, here's 4 shots. Let's use these. On the left of this panel, I'm going to scroll up a little bit. I've got all of the folders on my computer. And when you look in the media browser, you are looking at the folders on your computer. You're actually looking at the media files. Now, let me see if I can stand up without feedback. Stretch my legs. It worked. So, when you're working with media files, like a QuickTime movie or an MP4 file, which a lot of people are using, particularly if you're shooting with something like a DSLR, you're going to find that whether you're on Windows or Mac OS, you can play that file back. You can double-click to open it in QuickTime or Windows Movie Media Player or whichever. Or I'm a big fan of VLC, the Video Land System. It's the good universal player that will play a lot more formats. But that only really works if you're using a non-RAW format, and if you're familiar with the photographic concept of raw media, where it's just counting the number of photons hitting the camera sensor. We have the same technology for video. It won't work. And if you're working with what I would call a fragmented file type, that's something like if you're working with XD-CAM or P2. These camera systems, they break the media down into multiple folders and multiple files. Which one do you open? Well, the good thing about using the media browser in Premiere Pro is that it fixes that problem. Any media that Premiere Pro is able to play will display correctly in the media browser. And what you'll find is if you browse, actually I think I have some in here, it's a good example, might as well show you. Here's my content. Where is it now? Double identity, right. Here, this is a P2 media folder. Now I'm going to right click and I'm going to choose Reveal in Explorer. This will be Reveal in Finder on macOS. Here it is. And I'm going to double click to open this up. There's the contents folder you get from a P2 camera. And here's all of the folders. There's proxy and icon and voice. And the P2 cameras, the XD-CAM cameras, they allow you to record voiceover into the camera. And I've never met anybody that used it, but it's cool technology. And so you can see all of these folders and then, wow, which bit am I importing? And there's XML metadata and it's a mess. I'm going to toggle back to Premiere Pro. And in Premiere Pro, I'm going to open up that folder. And I don't see any of it. What I see is the video files with their audio and their metadata intact because the media browser is interpreting it for me. Now, there are other ways for you to import media into Premiere Pro. And there are some benefits to using one way or another. But I would recommend if you're starting out that you always use this method. In general, it's going to work. And it doesn't matter if it's video or audio or stills or Photoshop documents, it's going to work. Okay, so I think I'm going to get that Jolly's Garden content because it looks really cool. So I'm browsing, I'm just clicking on the folder on the left. And, oh, maybe I need to zoom out. It's not refreshing. Or did I get my first crash because I jumped in and out too much? Did I kill it? I think I crashed it. Well, I think I should get a prize for the earliest system crash in a presentation this year. I think that's pretty cool. You can see this is the Windows equivalent of the beach ball of death that you might have heard of. It's just thinking. So I'm going to quit, and Windows will eventually let me close the window, and it'll come up saying, "Oh, there you go." So I'm going to close the program. Windows will try to fix it. Somebody posted on Facebook the other day that Windows actually found a solution for a problem. I was very impressed. Okay, so I'm not going to bother going back into Premiere Pro. This is a good opportunity for me to show you. Here we go, in my lessons folder. There's my, no, that's not it. Here we go, project files. There's my amazing project file. So I can just open this up. I'm going to press enter or double click, or command down arrow on macOS, and I'm going to open this back up. Now, in Premiere Pro's defense, we're connecting via HDMI to a projection screen at a non-standard screen resolution for this system. So that could be a problem with Premiere Pro, or it could just be that the Windows machine is annoyed with me because I'm zooming and scaling and sending it to a second screen. So fair enough, we're back in our project. Let's go back into our media browser. And here's our footage. So if I like this footage, I can just, this is a thing called hover scrubbing on FCP. This is called skimming. And what I'm doing, I'll just zoom in a little bit more still so you can see. As I move my mouse across the clip, I'm not actually clicking, I'm just wafting. I think they should call this wafting. I think it's more poetic. I'm wafting my cursor across the clip. The left edge of the thumbnail represents the beginning of the clip, and the right edge represents the end. So I've got an instant indication of my content. And now up here, I've got another clip, and I can decide if I like it. I can single click to select, and now I get a mini timeline. Oops. And I can click and drag and view different parts of the content. If I double click to activate the clip,
You will choose it.
what happened?
You will choose it up.
I'm sorry?
You will going to choose it.
Yes, but I'm in the process of choosing. Remember I said, so the question is I was going to choose it. Remember 90% of working with nonlinear editing systems is looking at things and making choices. And so before we even get to the point where we decide that we're going to edit content into a sequence, we have to decide if we want to bring the content into our project. And so at this stage in the media browser, I'm just looking at the content and deciding, is this the right media? Are these the right shots? Is this the version that I want? Is this the content that I want? So this is an initial selection process. Now, inside this window, I can view in the thumbnail. But if I double click, as I did just now, it's going to open in the source monitor. Now this is kind of a special workflow because if you're used to working with any kind of nonlinear editing system, this is what you do when you look at clips that are in your project. But this video file is not in my project. What I'm doing is looking at the file that's on my storage that I have not imported in a bigger window. So all I'm doing is looking in a bigger window to decide if I want it. So now I can play, I've got a space bar for play and stop. This is slow motion footage. It was shot at 96 frames per second, so it's very slow. And I can play and stop at the bottom. I've got standard playback controls. So if I decide I want this, I can drag it into my project panel, but I don't need to. Down here, I'm going to select all of these clips, and I can do that by clicking on individual ones, and I can use the Shift key to make a list selection, or I can use the Control or Command key to make individual selections. Down at the bottom here, I can choose between a list or thumbnails. So they're just like regular files. I'm going to select all of these. I'm going to right-click, and I'm going to choose Import. Yeah, hi. A piece? Good question. Okay, so the question is, what if I only need a piece of my media? When you import media into Premiere Pro, you will always get the entire clip. You do have the option of working with in and out marks to specify the beginning and end of the piece that you want. But you would apply those marks once the clip is in the project, and they're persistent. If you use Adobe Prelude, which we'll look at later on this afternoon, then in Prelude you have the option to specify a piece of the media. But when you ingest with Prelude and you use those marks, you must create a copy of the media. A very small number of codecs and formats will allow you to just copy a piece, but it's basically two. I think it's XDCAM and maybe Cineform. There's very few codecs that will do it because they use, if you like, a modular compression system. Most of them, if you do that, if you just choose a piece, the system is going to retranscode. It's going to minimize the conversion, but it's going to create a new digital copy. To be honest, the quality is very, very high indeed, and you're unlikely to see a difference. But if you've got a difference map and you amplified it to 1000%, you might just be able to see some little indications of streaks and pixels where the recompression system had some what's called quantization. And if any of you know what the word quantization means, you, like me, need a better social life. We need to get out and go to more parties because it's a deeper level of the technology that most of the time the audience is not going to notice low-level quantization. I know I shouldn't say that here speaking for Adobe, but come on. You know. People don't notice the boom coming in shot. They're not going to notice a 1,000th of a bit depth change. Does that answer your question? Great. Okay, so when I right-clicked and I chose Import, the system gave me clips in my bin that I'm ready to use in my project. I don't have to use them, but I can. So if I I have this control, I can switch to a thumbnail view. And let's take this one. I'm going to double-click to open it in the source monitor. And let's decide that we're only going to use a piece of this. Let's use just a piece in our sequence. Well, in Premiere Pro, the way you specify the beginning and the end of the piece that you want from a clip is you use two special kinds of marker, and they're called in and out marks. The name in and out comes from optical processing from celluloid film, where the light would be cut in and cut out. And there'd be a special mark with China graph pencil on the celluloid to define the region that you want. A lot of the terminology that you'll find in nonlinear editing systems that makes no sense comes from film editing. Take, for example, the word clip. The word clip, and these are all clips in my project panel, the word clip comes from film editing, where they had a clipper, and they would use the clipper to clip the film. And so once they clipped the film, like clipping your hair, they wanted a name for that piece of film, so they called it a clip. And that's why we still use the word to this day. Okay, so in my clip, I can play back, but let's say I want this just before the guy walks on screen. And this is a bit like YouTube, you know, I can click and scrub along the bottom here. So just there, I'm going to click on this. Actually, this is a stylized in-mark China graph pencil mark from film editing. I'm going to click this button. And you can see I've got I hope you can make out there on the projector, I've got a lighter region at the bottom of the video. And then I'm going to just zoom out a little bit again. I'm going to scrub through here. I'm going to click and drag. I like this action. And then they're off screen. I'm going to mark an out point. And the keyboard shortcut for these is easy to remember. It's I for in and O for out. So I'm going to press O, and now you can see more clearly I've got a highlighted region. Now in Premiere Pro, I would say that editing with a nonlinear editing system is more like writing with a word processing application than it's like video editing or film editing. You can compare videotape editing, you can compare editing with videotapes or with film, but the reality is it's a lot more like word processing. You can copy and paste and insert and overwrite. All of those changes are changes that you can make at any time you like in Premiere Pro. And one of the changes that you can make is that you can change your mind about the piece of the clip that you want to use. So it doesn't matter if I've chosen a part now, I can change it later on. I'll show you how. Is that a question or? Yeah.
Now after we select the input and output,
Yeah.
we are going to put through the timeline. Right?
Yes.
So how
How are you going to put it in the timeline?
That's what I'm going to show you right now. It's the next thing I'm going to show you. But I'm glad we're on the same page. Yeah.
I don't know how to say it in English, but I will ask you in Arabic, maybe some friends.
I'll try to feel it.
Some friends will translate.
Okay, sure.
هل يا ترى هذه المادة التي نأتي بها داخل البريمير ستشمل حيز في الهارد ديسك الرئيسي يعني
Something about visual effects and coffee.
He's asking about exactly, okay, when I did the new project,
Yeah.
now the Premiere will take a link from the main video and leave the original data in the hard disk.
Oh, great question. Thank you.
Separate,
Okay. Thank you. That's a great question. Thank you. You reminded me of something I intended to tell you. Remember I was saying earlier that, so the question is what happens with the media on your hard disk when you import it in the way that I just did? Remember I was saying earlier that Premiere Pro just uses the file path and the file name. By default, when you import media to Premiere Pro, all that really happens is you create a shortcut inside Premiere Pro that links to that media file. Nothing happens to the media file. It isn't copied, it isn't transcoded or moved. Now, if you've been cutting on Media Composer, you'll be used to Media Composer. When you import, it takes a copy and it transcodes and converts the format into DNX HD wrapped in MXF. But that's Media Composer. And the reason Media Composer does that is that it's good at playing multiple formats. It's not as good as Premiere Pro. And so it works best if you use DNX HD media. But if you're working in Premiere Pro, the playback performance for any file type is fantastic. So there's no need for conversion. There's no need for duplication into a specific folder. So the good thing about this process is when you import clips into Premiere Pro, they just play. The bad thing about that is that you are responsible for deciding where the files will be. You want your video files to be on a fast drive that's always connected to the system. Because if you unplug the drive, your clips will go offline. You'll still have the clips inside your project, but there won't be any media. It's kind of like having the shopping list and throwing away the trolley full of food. You know the food should be there, but there's no food. So a menu without a kitchen. I don't know how far I can stretch this analogy. So, in a recent update to Premiere Pro, Adobe added ingest functionality, which is the checkbox I mentioned earlier on. And if you enable that functionality, you can choose for Premiere Pro to work the same way as Avid. You can choose for Premiere Pro to copy the media to wherever you want and to convert it. But I don't want to cover that right now. We'll maybe look at that this afternoon. It's another level. You were first on that. Okay, is there a media file system that Adobe prefers? Nope. Is it there? Is it fast? Can it see it? It's fine. Oh, great question. Okay, so the question is, does it matter if you're mixing ProRes or DNx HD? Nope. Premiere Pro's playback engine is phenomenal. You can put anything you want into a sequence. It will conform on playback and it will just work. Visual effects, full quality, it'll play out to your client monitor. It's quite transformational if you're used to working with a different system. There was a question here.
Is there a way like in Photoshop or Illustrator that you can make a package?
Say again with the microphone, now you have it.
Is there a way that you can make a package of the Premiere project and send it, including the media, everything in one package?
Oh, I like that question. That'd be a great feature request. No, is the short answer. After Effects has that functionality. This afternoon I'm going to show you After Effects functionality that will blow your mind. If it doesn't blow your mind, nothing will blow your mind. It has the ability to create motion graphic template files that contain media and edits and editable effects, but not Premiere Pro. In Premiere Pro, most people just make a folder and there it is. There is a way in Premiere Pro to automate pulling everything together into a single folder. There's a project management tool that will do that for you automatically. But there's nothing that will make a single file, if that's what you're thinking. Okay, we should get into editing. So, I imported some clips. I love my clips. It's time for me to make a sequence. I'm gonna create a project. But I need a sequence to put the clips into. Now everybody knows what a folder is, right? You put things inside of folders. And if I make a bin in Premiere Pro, that's this button right down here at the bottom. New bin. And I'll call this media. There we go. I've got this now, there it is. It works like a folder. And I can take these clips, I'm using the shift key to select them, and I'm going to drag them in. And now I'm tidying up my bin. See, I've got a media bin. If I go to the list view, I can expand that, and you can see this is just like a folder system. Fine. But for me to make an edited program, I need to have a sequence to put the clips inside of. And what's important about sequences in Premiere Pro, you can have as many as you like, you can name them whatever you want, they will always be inside of your Premiere Pro project file. If you're used to Avid, there's no file-based bins in Premiere Pro, unfortunately, there's just one project file. But there are awesome multiple project browsing workflows that are phenomenal, so it's kind of cool. What's important about a sequence is that, like clips, it has settings. So if you have a media file is going to have a number of frames per second, that's the frame rate. Is it shot at 24 frames per second or 30? Or it's PAL here, right? 25 frames per second PAL. So that just, your eye needs something like 21.77 frames. I can never remember if it's 7.7 or 6.6. It's one or the other. It's about 21 and 2/3 frames per second for your brain to be convinced that there's motion. And that's largely because of a latent image effect in your eye, that there's a little afterglow of the image, and so the next image appears and appears and appears, and your brain says, oh, it must be there, because it never goes away. And so that's why film is 24, they just added 10%. It's the minimum frame rate for film. 25 was chosen because of the electricity power supply frequency. It was used as a synchronization signal for cameras. Anyway, let's not get into that. But video clips, they have a frame rate, they have a frame size. How many pixels? If you're working HD, it's going to be 1920 by 1080. If you're working SD, it's going to be 720 by 576. That's the frame size. It's an image resolution. Pixels are not always square. So your video clip is, maybe it's going to have non-square pixels. Maybe it's, what is it, 1.09 for 4:3 or 1.61, I think it is, for widescreen standard definition. Each individual dot may not be square. So all of these settings that apply to your video clips also apply to your sequence. The sequence is a container that you're going to put clips inside of. And when you put the clips inside, regardless of the original media settings, the frame rate, for example, of your media, Premiere Pro will convert that video clip live into the settings you choose for your sequence. For this reason, it's extremely important that you choose the correct settings for your sequence. There's a long way of doing that, and there's a short way. I prefer the short way. The whole thing's automatic. But if you know about the technology, you can manually create sequences, which I'm going to show you now. The process of standardizing the playback is called conforming. It doesn't matter what it's called. What's important is that it will convert your media. So, if you're working with high definition footage or UHD 4K footage, and you put that into a standard definition sequence, Premiere Pro will just chop the image. You'll lose all of your resolution. You can change that, you can change the settings, but you need to know that it's going to happen. So how do we make a sequence? Well, there is a shortcut right here in the timeline panel where you build sequences. I don't know if you can read at the back there, it says, drop media here to create sequence. So let's do that. I'm going to take a clip. Actually, I can take all of them if I want. Question?
We select the part for the video.
Yes.
How do we, if I choose this part,
Yes.
I want to the timeline directly.
Okay, I think I followed your question. So the question is, if I chose a part of a clip using in and out marks, how do I make sure just that part is included in the sequence? That's the question, right? And the answer is, it always will be just that part, because that's the way Premiere Pro works. So the reason you put those marks onto the clip is specifically so that only that piece is added. Is that my phone? Maybe it is. Let me move this to another pocket. We're going to flight mode. There you go. Very unprofessional. So, if you have marks assigned to a clip that specify the part that you're going to use, it doesn't matter how you add the clip to the sequence, because there's several ways. I'm going to show you the easy way, but there are several ways. There's keyboard shortcuts, there's buttons, there's different places to drag. It makes no difference how you add the clip to the sequence. Always, only the piece you chose will be used. And it's persistent. You can quit Premiere Pro, you can move the project to another system. It's always on the clip. Yeah? Oh, we have a mic. I'm getting old, my hearing's going.
I got a whole clip.
Yep.
And then I just need this sequence.
Yep.
This part.
Yep.
For the beginning sequence.
Yeah.
And for towards the end of the sequence, I wanted the end of that clip.
Great. I know where you're going. I know what you're going to ask. Okay, so how do I use two different parts?
Yes.
So it's an interesting feature request that I have had for a long time. And I've proposed this feature to Adobe, to Avid, to Grass Valley, and nobody ever uses this feature to allow you to pre-select multiple pieces of your clip. In Premiere Pro and all nonlinear editing systems, you can only ever have one in mark and one out mark. So if you change the location, you lose the original piece. However, you can easily duplicate a clip. And so now you have two copies of the clip, and each one can have different marks. You can also create what are called subclips very easily. Maybe, remind me in the later session, I'll show you subclips. It's a little piece of the clip in the bin in its own clip. It's a separate item. You can also add what are called markers, which are just unnumbered sections, and you can jump between them to add sections later on. My feature request was that if you have multiple markers in a clip, if you place your playhead, that's the blue line down here, this marker here, if you place that between two markers, mark them with in and out marks when you press a button. And in fact, Avid Media Composer has this feature. It's called Mark Locators. It's a great feature. Premiere Pro doesn't have it. By the way, Adobe reads every feature request. So if you want to send them, say hi to the management team, go to the Adobe feature request page and send them a little message. say, hey, how's it going? You know, give them some jokes, give them a recipe for lasagna, and ask them for this feature. Okay, so I'm going to zoom out a little bit so you can see this. I'm going to take one of these clips, and I'm just going to drag that clip into the empty timeline panel. And that's it, I have a sequence. I have a sequence that automatically matches the frame rate, frame size, pixel aspect ratio, field order. It has a correct renderer if I need to render effects. Everything's ready to go. So if I understand the technology and I know what I need to do, I'm going to show you the menu in a moment to manually select this stuff. But if you don't know what those settings are, don't worry about it. Now I want to rewind a couple of steps to reiterate what I've done. I opened up Premiere Pro, I clicked New Project, I gave it a name and a location, and I clicked OK. I used the media browser to find the videos that I want. I selected them, and I right-clicked and I chose Import. Then I dragged one of those clips into the sequence, into the timeline panel, and now I'm ready to edit. At no point did I have to understand anything about media technology, or codecs, or formats, or aspect ratios, or anything. Premiere Pro is taking care of this for me, and I can tell you with some confidence that it's doing it correctly. You don't have to worry. So now, if we look in the bin, the clip that I dragged into the sequence was called JG_1.mp4. This is actually some sample footage that we shot for my first feature film project that we're working on now called Jolly's Garden. Come and ask me about it later. It's a great project. The sequence was named after the clip that I used, so it's called JG_1. Can you see the icon is different? Sequences are in bins. You can have as many as you want, and they exist in the project panel just like clips. But I probably want to rename this, because otherwise it's going to be difficult to remember which is the clip and which is the sequence. So I'm going to click on the name, and I'm going to rename this Master Sequence, just so I know this is the main one. There we go. So now, in the timeline panel, I've got a video clip. And I want to show you a couple of details about the sequence. First of all, you'll notice that I've got a number of tracks. These are different little horizontal lines across the timeline panel, where I can add clips if I want. I've got video 1, 2, and 3, V1, 2, 3, and if I want to, I can add more. Then I've got audio 1, 2, and 3. You'll notice that these video tracks are one above the other, and in Premiere Pro, I can drag clips onto any track I want. And if a video clip is above another video clip, it will play in front. So something on video 3 will be in front of something on video 1, right? But audio clips all play together. Now I can tell immediately by looking at this that this media has no audio. And the reason I know is that when I dragged it into the timeline panel, it has no, I can just resize this a little bit, I can see the thumbnail. It has no audio. You see down here, there's nothing on the audio track. So I know there's no audio. But let's add some audio. So I'm going to go over to my media browser, and I'm going to go, I'm a bit tight for space here because I'm zoomed in a long way. But down here, I've got some music. Here we go. And let's take this one. It's a clip called Ambient Heaven. So I'm going to right click, import, and now here it is in my bin, in my project panel. I'm going to drag it into this audio track. There we go. Just zoom out a tiny bit. So now I've got a video clip and I've got an audio clip. So if I play, let's zoom out a little. Remember the program monitor at the top right shows you the contents of your sequence. The source monitor at the top left shows you the clips that you open up to take a look at. You won't necessarily use them, but you'll use the source monitor to mark clips to choose the piece that you want. So now, if I play, I get my audio. I should get my audio. I think I do. It's pretty subtle. It is there though. It really is ambient, isn't it? So now I'm combining video and audio. And editing video in Premiere Pro is really very simple. I'm going to find the shots that I want. I'm going to open them in the source monitor to decide if I like them, double click, or you can drag and drop. Then I'm going to mark the section that I want, and I'm going to add those clips to my sequence. In the timeline panel, time goes left to right. If you look closely at the top, we have a time code indication. That's hours, minutes, seconds, and frames. It's just time passing, and it's going from left to right. So if I want a clip to go second, I put it to the right. If I want to use a piece of the clip, I use in and out marks. If I want a clip to be in front, I put it above. And it's a bit like Lego. You know, Lego bricks, you piece them together. It's like building a model with Lego. So here, I'm going to start adding some more shots. Let's double click on this one. Yeah, I like the look of this. So let's go from here. I'm going to mark an in with the I key to here. I'm going to mark an O with the out key. And now if I want to, I can drag that clip straight from the bin if I like, straight from the project panel, or I can drag it up here from the source monitor. I often use the source monitor just because it's a bigger area of the screen for me to click on. I mentioned I'm getting old, you know, I'm getting some gray hair in my beard now, and I don't like squinting at the little icons in the bin. So I can drag this large image down to the sequence. So let's do that. I'm clicking, you see I get a grab hand icon, and I'm going to drag down to the timeline, and there's another clip segment. I release the mouse, and now I've got 2 clips. So now, if I zoom out a little, I'm going to play across the cut. There it is. I'll just do that again, it was pretty brief. There it is. I made a sequence. Technically, that is a sequence. And, you know, if this was French New Wave cinema, I could probably put that on a screen and make money from it. So, in theory, at this point, I could export this as a file and put it online or distribute it on TV networks or whatever. That is a sequence. And video editing in Premiere Pro is just what I showed you just there, again and again and again and again. Look at your clips, decide if you like it, mark the section you want, and put it into your sequence. Now, I'm going to add a couple more, so I'm just going to be kind of random with this. Oh, that was long, isn't it? Let's choose a short piece of this. There we go. And I'm just going to make this a little bit taller so we can see the waveform. So this is a very dramatic scene. This is about this girl is blind and this guy's confused, doesn't know what to do. And I think, yeah, let's take this as well. I'll mark this a little bit. And at the bottom of the timeline panel, there's a little navigator. I can click and drag to change the piece of the window I'm seeing. And now I'm going to put this down here as well. And now you can see I've got multiple clips in my sequence, and I'm editing video. Now, what if I want to move the clips around? What if I want to change the order that they appear? Well, remember, this is a non-linear editing system, so I can do that very easily. But before I do that, I'm just going to scroll along a little bit. Remember I was saying earlier that you can change your mind about the piece of the clip that you want to use. And the process for doing that is called trimming. So with this clip on the timeline, let's say I decide, you know, I took this much of it, but I want to get it right to the end of the clip. All you have to do is resize the clip in the same way that you would resize a folder. So I'm going to hover my mouse over the end of the clip. You see I get this red arrow, and now I'm going to drag. I'm going to click, and I'm going to hold down the mouse button, and I'm going to drag to the right to reclaim some of the shot that I didn't use earlier. So I'm clicking and I'm dragging. You see, it's telling me the duration, it's telling me the adjustment I'm making, and there's a limit. There's a point where I can't drag anymore. I'm at the end of the shot. I release the mouse, and now I have more of the shot. But it's a little bit loud, isn't it? I'll turn that down on my laptop here. There we go. Okay. So, in a way, it's a little bit like when you take a whole clip and you have it in the source monitor and you're looking at it, and you use in and out marks, it's a little bit like folding back the clip. You're not throwing anything away, really. You're just folding it out of view and putting that onto the timeline. So if you change your mind later, you're just unfolding that part of the clip again. And of course you can do the beginning or the end, and you can do a piece of it, whatever you like. There are several ways to trim. There are fast ways, slow ways, precise ways, casual ways, keyboard shortcuts. You can do playback trim, JKL trim if you're familiar with it on Avid. All of that is in Premiere Pro. But the principle is the one I just showed you. Because it's so easy to do, you don't need to worry about being precise when you choose your in and out marks in the source monitor. Don't worry about it. The main thing is to get the order right. And in fact, when I build my initial sequence, the first sequence you make is called an assembly. And you're just getting the order right. If I have a clapperboard, if I have a slate, I will often include the director saying action and the director saying cut. I include absolutely everything in my first version of the sequence. Then the second version, I just remove. I use the same trimming control to chop away the pieces that I know I don't want. That's your first rough cut. And then you keep doing that again and again and again. It's like whittling wood or sanding. You know, you start with the rough sandpaper, it gets finer and finer and finer, and then you have a fine cut. And then you're ready for your effects. So, if I look down here on the timeline, what if I want to, I'm just going to scroll along a little bit. What if I want this shot to be at the beginning? I want to change the order. Well, now I'm working, it's a bit like a mosaic. I'm working with pieces that I can move anywhere I like, and they're not glued into place. So if I want to, I can take this and drag it, let's say, to the middle of the clip. And I release the mouse button, and now, I don't know if you can see too clearly, I left a gap where the clip was before, and I inserted it right here in the middle of the shot. Actually, technically, using the language of nonlinear editing systems, I did not insert it. What I did is overwrite. So the original media that was there is gone. Except, of course, it's not gone. It's always available. I can always trim it back or edit it in again. But for the purposes of playing back my sequence, I replaced those frames with the frames from this clip instead. If I undo, I'm pressing Ctrl Z or Command Z, and I click and drag, but this time I'm going to hold the Control key, this is Command on Mac OS, and release the mouse, something interesting happens. Premiere Pro still left a gap, but it then inserted into that clip, pushing out of the way the media that was there. I just held down the Command key. But because it inserted, it also added a gap to the music. See here? Now, Premiere Pro doesn't have to do that. Premiere Pro can also just leave the music where it is. It's a setting on the timeline. I can lock the track. There's a little padlock icon which I can lock to make sure nothing happens to the audio. Or I can turn off what are called sync locks. There's another little button on the track that says don't move this around when I'm working on other tracks. But by default I have this option, and Premiere Pro will pluck the clip out and insert it into another part of the timeline. Because of the way this impacts music or other tracks in the sequence, it's usually a good idea to use this method when you don't have multiple tracks yet. So for example, at the very beginning of your edit, you're just going to lay down lots of clips that you think are interesting, and then you're going to shuffle them around and move them and decide the order that you want. But the process is what I showed you right there. Drag it, let go, you're done. You're building a Lego version, a mosaic version of your sequence. And if you hold the Command key or the Control key, it's going to insert and push things away. What if I want to remove a clip? Well, it's pretty straightforward. Everybody knows the delete key. So I can select a clip and I can hit delete. It's gone. Now, in your computer, there are really just 3 modifier keys. That's a key that changes the way another key works. On Mac OS, you have Command, Alt, and Shift, or Command, Option, and Shift. There is a Control key, but that's very rarely used for modifier keys on Mac OS. In Windows, you also have 3 modifier keys. They're Control, Shift, and Alt. Sounds familiar, right? Shift and Alt are the same on both operating systems. There are only 3. So if I teach you today to use a modifier key, don't worry about remembering it, because you can only get it wrong twice. The third time, you will get it right. So don't worry, experiment, try it out, you can always undo. Just now, I used the shift key, just now I used the delete key to remove a clip, but I left a gap behind, which is kind of like moving the clip and leaving a gap and overwriting. It's a videotape style way of working. If I drag into the timeline, it's a videotape style way of working. It lays over the top like an old school typewriter. If I drag the clip using the control key or the command key, it'll insert, it shuffles things around. That's like film editing, it's like word processing, inserting text. In fact, the same rule applies if I drag something from the project panel. If I take a clip here and I drag this in, I'm holding down control, this is command on macOS. You see I get the pointy teeth, the arrows that say what's going to happen. I release the mouse, everything moves out of the way. So the control or command key gives you that film style, inserting, extracting style way of editing. But if I want to remove a clip and I want the gap to close, there's a keyboard shortcut for it, but if I want to remove a segment, I can hold shift when I press delete, it closes the gap. Now, it left a little extra gap because that was from a different section. So the section that I chose, the gap's closed. It doesn't matter if you remember whether it's the control key or the shift key. What matters is that you remember you can do both and try it out with a modifier key. So I'm going to clean this up a bit. I'm going to remove this gap, I'm going to remove this gap, and now I've got a few clips and I'm happy with them. So now you know how to make a project, import clips, make a sequence, put the clips into a sequence, change the order and remove them again. You're basically editors, so congratulations. And you're ready to start making movies. But what if you want to maybe have a transition effect? What if you want to have a cross dissolve? Well, Premiere Pro has a long list of visual effects and audio effects. And the process to apply them is basically the same everywhere. So I'm going to go over here to my project panel. Into this frame is my project panel. Amazing project. I think we all agree it's amazing so far. I'm amazed. It's an intuitive editing system. Over here I've got a panel called Effects. Now you may not have an effects panel listed in the same place. And if you don't worry. I'm going to show you two ways to always find panels in Premiere Pro. Right at the top of the screen, you'll notice I have all of these names: assembly, editing, color, effects. These are preset layouts for Premiere Pro. They're referred to as workspaces. And a workspace just means which panels are being displayed and where are they. So you can choose different workspaces by clicking on these words. I'm clicking on effects, I'm clicking on color, this is bringing up the Lumetri panel, audio, back to editing. If you're in a workspace and it does not match the workspace for a tutorial or someone like me showing you, there's a little menu. See these little lines, these three lines? Now, in Avid, they have a menu like this. It's called the fast menu, but it looks like a hamburger. So the Avid trainers, they always say, call it the burger menu. Well, actually, they say, don't call it the burger menu. In the official training for Avid, it says, do not call this the burger menu. So everybody calls it the burger menu. In Premiere Pro, this is called the panel menu. But I like computer games, so for me, this is the air conditioning duct menu. If you're a fan of the old Half-Life computer games. No gamers here? One nod. So this is the air conditioning duct. It gives you menu options to do with that panel. And in this menu, I've got the option to reset the workspace. And if even that doesn't work for you, it's the same as this little menu next to the name of the workspace. Reset to save layout. If you ever follow any tutorials, a lot of my tutorials are on the Adobe Help. If you ever follow any of my tutorials or anybody else's, begin by resetting the workspace, because we always use the standard workspace. And then your screen will match mine. But if you've opened an older project and you don't have that panel, you can always access it by going to Window, and you'll find the workspaces are here, and you have the same options. Sorry? It's the same. If you don't have the workspace panel, it's because you've opened an older project or your existing workspaces were updated, it doesn't include it. Go to the window menu And if in doubt, you'll find that every single panel in Premiere Pro is under the window menu. If you're ever lost, if anybody ever says, oh, you need the marker panel, for example, and you're thinking, where's the marker panel? I don't know what that is. They're in alphabetical order under the window menu. You will find every single panel in this menu. And you'll find the workspaces. So you can choose them and reset. Okay, so I'm going to go to my effects panel, and I've got all of these different categories. I'm going to expand video transitions. There's lots of them. And I'm going to choose cross dissolve, which is the only video transition with dignity. And if you, unless you're Spielberg, or maybe Lucas. Lucas can do a wipe and a clock wipe. He does it in Star Wars, but that's it. Unless you change your name to George Lucas, forget it. So get it out of your system early. I'm going to drag this icon onto my timeline in between the two clips. You see I got a highlight there to tell me where the transition is going to go? I just drag it on, release the mouse, and play. Aha, so what did I do there? I just dragged a transition effect from one clip to the same clip. Because remember I moved the thing and I inserted it? I tell you, it's genius. It's just my genius as an editor. Let's undo that and try it with two different clips. So let's drag this on, and here we go. Let's use these two. So now I have a cross dissolve. So you can drag and drop effects on. Can anybody guess how to remove a transition effect? Too many voices. You select it and you hit delete. So here on the timeline, I'm going to select this transition effect, one click, and I'm going to press the delete key and it's gone. So now you know how to add transition effects. And if you have a transition effect applied, let's put a different one on. Let's do, here we go, look, we'll do a page peel. Just for you. Just for you, I'm going to do a page peel. Nice. Oh, that's great. Whew. My heart's beating fast now. If I select this and go to the Effect Controls panel, the Effect Controls panel gives you all of the controls for any effects that you select. In this case, I'm choosing a transition effect, but I can also apply effects to a clip. So let's take a simple example, just so it's visual, because we need to finish this session in a moment. I'm going to go to Video Effects, I'm going to go to Blurs, and I'm going to choose this Gaussian blur. There's lots of different blurs. You're probably going to choose the Gaussian blur, it's a good blur. I'm going to drag this onto a clip, let's choose this one. I just drag it on. And now, with the clip selected, how do I select? Single click. With a single click selection, up in my Effect Controls panel, I've got all of these different controls for all of the things I can do to the clip. And because I added the Gaussian blur, there's the Gaussian blur with the blurriness. We're going to cover masking effects later on today, it's very cool. But right now all I've got is blurriness. I love the name of this control. So I can click and drag this, and as I do, let me move my playhead over the top, duplicate the edges, I'm getting a more and more blurred effect. So you get all of the controls in the Effect Controls panel for any effects that you drag onto a clip. It's just a panel, Effect Controls. If you don't see it, it's usually with the source monitor. If you don't see it, it will be under the window menu. If you're lost, look in the window menu. It's always going to be there. So now I have a Gaussian blur. How will I remove the Gaussian blur effect? Any guesses? Select it. You see it's highlighted. I clicked on it and hit delete. It's gone. So now you know how to make a project, import media, make a sequence, put clips in the sequence, move the clips around, change the piece you're going to use, take them out again, add transition effects, add visual effects, change the visual effects, remove the visual effects. But the last thing we need to do, we'll cover audio later on, is export. You're going to share this with the world.
Can we do the blurry in and out?
I'm sorry?
In and out the blurry?
For
the blurry.
Oh, for the blur effect.
Yes.
So that's a great question. Can you do an in and out for the blur effect? In a way you can. The language you would use would be different. You would use a feature called keyframing. With a keyframe, you mark the beginning of where you want the effect to begin happening. And so you'd have a mark for no blur, another mark for lots of blur, and then another mark for keeping the blur, and then another mark for no blur. And that way you have blur and then no blur. It's a feature I'm going to show you today, so stick around. I'll show you keyframing.
Thanks a lot.
Okay, File, Export, Media. Now, I'm not going to show you all of the detail on this, but basically all you need to do here is choose the format. Most people are using H.264. That's a standard delivery format these days. So I'm going to choose H.264. And if you look under all of the presets, we've got lots and lots and lots and lots of presets. It goes on and on and on and on and on. Many presets on the list. Did I mention there are a lot of presets? There are lots and lots of presets. But what you're probably going to want is this one, YouTube 1080p HD. YouTube.
What do you use it or should be in YouTube? So it will not directly to YouTube.
Well, you can put it directly to YouTube, but it's up to you.
I don't want to.
You don't have to. No. So this preset is just pre-selecting the settings. It's not going to put it on YouTube. It's just that this standard is a good safe bet for a quality to output.
Program you should upload to cancel to your desktop.
I'm not sure I follow.
That's in the video view as a program.
Yeah.
As YouTube, full HD. You can say upload to YouTube directly.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
You,
if I understand you,
yeah.
you can choose if you want to also upload to YouTube from Premiere Pro. Yeah, you choose. But what I'm showing you here is not that feature. What I'm showing you here is how to make a file. And the option to upload to YouTube is in this menu. So here I'm choosing a standard. If you're not sure what setting to choose, the first option on the list is to match source. It'll just be the same as your sequence. But now that I'm happy with the setting for output, I just need to choose where the file is going to go. See, it says output name. I can click this, and it'll give me a browse window where I can specify where this is going to go. Here I'm going to go to my desktop, click save, and now I'm ready to click export. One second. If I want to also upload this file to YouTube or Behance or Vimeo, then inside this panel, I've got a publish option. And under publish, I've got all of these different services. I can log in directly. Twitter is there, YouTube is there, and it'll upload the file as well. But the upload to the service is separate from the creation of the file. The system has to make the file and then upload it. So there are separate options for both stages. Was that your question? Okay. Yeah.
Another part.
Yeah.
Before I do the export, do I need to do any rendering on this program?
Great question. Do I need to render to export?
Yes.
Let me explain rendering in the session where we're going to cover effects. But the short answer is no. You never need to render for export. Only to preview the playback sometimes. The rendering is just for you to take a look at the effect without dropping frames, with a smooth playback. You can benefit from rendering on export, but you don't need to. It has no impact on output quality. Okay, we ran over a little bit. No, I think we said 12:30. We're okay. So we'll cover some of the more advanced controls. We're going to cover a little bit of color correction in the next session. Is there? We probably have time for one very brief question more. Yeah.
I noticed on the timeline there is between the two videos a small triangle.
Yes.
What does it mean?
That's a great question. You have great eyesight. The little triangle that you're seeing indicates, let me click away so you can see it. It indicates that you're on the last frame of the clip. If you get a triangle at the beginning, it indicates that you're on the first frame of the clip. So there's no more clip available. You'll notice that the shot to the right has no triangle. That's because there's more media available. And that additional media is called a handle. And it's called a handle because in film editing, that's the bit you put your fingers on. That's the bit you're going to throw away. So you would handle the film using the handles and never touch the piece that you want to include. And so that's what the triangle indicates. It's a great question. Okay, so that was pretty fast, right? But you now know how to edit in Premiere Pro. Don't forget to save. At the top of the application, you notice next to the project name I have a little asterisk star. That asterisk tells me that I've made changes to the project file, but I haven't saved. What's the keyboard shortcut for save? S. So now I saved. So if you see that asterisk, it means that if you have a power cut, you lost everything since your last save. Premiere Pro makes multiple backup versions automatically, so you'll never lose more than maybe 15 minutes of your work, but of your time. But saving is good. You know, the computer's dying. Okay, ready for a break? Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay, now the lunch is ready. You can visit the guys, the sponsors on the right side, Graphies, ISO, and you can have your lunch it's right here on the right side, and you can sit on the table there, here, wherever you want.
If it's crashing, it's